She had come so close. Again, the scoreboard told one story, 6-3, 7-5, but the real story was written on Mirra Andreeva's face as she sank into her courtside chair, buried her face in her hands, and let the weight of it all come crashing down. This was the Mutua Madrid Open final. This was supposed to be her moment. And yet, for the first time in 3 WTA 1000-level finals, she had walked away without the trophy. But here's the thing about Mirra Andreeva, and this is what makes her one of the most compelling figures in modern tennis. She doesn't just lose. She feels every single loss like it's the end of the world. And on this Saturday afternoon in Madrid, the world had ended once again. To understand what happened on that court, you have to go back to the week that preceded it, because this wasn't supposed to be a story about heartbreak. This was supposed to be a story about a teenage prodigy coming of age, about a young Russian finding her fire and channeling it into something unstoppable. Earlier in the tournament, that's exactly what she had done. Andreeva had used her own emotions as fuel, fighting through the kind of inner turbulence that would derail most players, surviving moments where the frustration was so palpable it seemed like it might consume her. But it didn't. It propelled her. She had made it to the final, and she had done it on sheer competitive will. Then came Marta Kostyuk. The Ukrainian had already beaten Andreeva once this year, a result that lingered in the back of every mind as the two walked onto the court for the final. Kostyuk is the kind of player who carries her own quiet storm. She doesn't do drama in the way Andreeva does. She does precision. She does resolve. And on this particular afternoon, she did something far more damaging to the Russian teenager. She made everything look almost effortless. For nearly an hour and a half, Andreeva played as the favorite. She was expected to win. The crowd knew it. Her team knew it. She knew it. And that weight, the weight of expectation, is one of the heaviest burdens in professional sport. Playing as the favorite in a final is a different psychological beast entirely. You're not hunting anymore. You're defending something that isn't even yours yet, and the fear of losing it can be paralyzing. Through the first set, the match slipped away in increments. 6-3, clean, decisive, controlled. Kostyuk taking the opener with the kind of authority that shifts the entire atmosphere of a match. Suddenly, the crowd's energy changes. Suddenly, the narrative shifts. Suddenly, the teenager who had looked so dangerous all week had to recalibrate, had to find something deep inside herself to turn the tide. She couldn't. The second set went to 7-5, and with it, the title. And then came the moment that will define how people remember this match, not the scoreline, not the tactics, not the athletic execution, but what happened afterward. Andreeva, sitting in her chair, face buried in her hands. A teenager at the highest level of her sport, surrounded by thousands of people, completely and utterly alone in her grief. It was raw. It was uncomfortable to watch. It was also completely, undeniably human. When she stepped up to take the microphone for her runner-up speech, something shifted in the arena. There's a particular kind of silence that falls when a crowd senses they're about to witness something real, not rehearsed, not polished, not managed for public consumption. This was that silence.
"I'm sorry," she said, her voice catching. "I promised myself I'm not gonna cry. I'm sorry." She had placed her runner-up plate between herself and her support team in the stands, a small, telling gesture. "Because it's easier like this," she explained. Easier not to look at them directly. Easier to hold herself together when she wasn't meeting their eyes. And then, in words that cut right through the ceremony and the occasion, she looked at her team and said what so many athletes feel but so few ever articulate. "I know it's sometimes maybe not easy to work with me, but I really appreciate all your support and everything you do for me." That line alone reveals something essential about who Mirra Andreeva is. She knows. She is fully, painfully self-aware of the emotional turbulence she brings to her environment. She knows that her intensity, the very thing that makes her dangerous on court, is also the thing that makes her difficult. And in that moment of loss, her first instinct wasn't to protect her image or compose herself for the cameras. It was to apologize to the people who walk alongside her through it all. Later, meeting with reporters, she pulled back the curtain even further. "Every time I lose," she said, "every time it's like the end of the world to me." She paused, as if sitting with the weight of that truth. I don't know, sometimes I see other players, smile right after the defeat, right after the matches they lost. To me, I don't understand how people do it. I wish I could do it. There's a fascinating duality at the heart of those words. On one hand, it sounds like vulnerability, a young athlete confessing that she can't regulate her emotions the way others seem to. On the other hand, there is something deeply admirable, even enviable, about caring that much. In an era where athletes are coached to project calm and composure at all times, to manage their brand and their image, Andreeva's emotional honesty is almost radical. She feels everything. She hides nothing. And for a teenager competing at the very top of a brutally demanding sport, that is both her greatest strength and her most exposed nerve. Every match that I lose is obviously very disappointing and very painful to me, she continued. I hope that maybe in the future this can improve and I can maybe, after the match that I lose, I can talk about it right away and not take some time before starting to talk about it. Even in her reflection, there's growth. She's not just lamenting her emotional response, she's analyzing it, understanding it, wanting to evolve. That is the mindset of a champion in the making, even when the scoreboard says otherwise. And yet, even on what she described as a hard day, Andreeva refused to let the narrative end in darkness. She spoke about the week as a whole with a clarity that belied her age. Overall, I think that when we talk with my team, I think we can take a lot of positives from this week, she said. Yeah, it's been tough, but overall I think it was a pretty good 2 weeks for me. She also had something to look forward to, a doubles final the very next day, partnering with Diana Schneider. A chance, as she put it, to lift her spirits. A chance to walk back onto the same grounds that had just broken her heart and come away with something to celebrate. That is the story of Mirra Andreeva, and it is far from over. She is a teenager who has already reached 3 WTA 1000 level finals. A teenager who plays with the passion of someone who has spent a lifetime chasing a dream and the urgency of someone who knows exactly what's at stake. She wears her heart not just on her sleeve, but everywhere. On the court, in press conferences, in runner-up speeches that leave entire arenas holding their breath. Marta Kostyuk was the better player on Saturday in Madrid. She was clinical, she was composed, and she deserves every credit for a masterful performance in a final that demanded her very best. But the story that lingered, the story that will be remembered, belonged to the young Russian sitting in that courtside chair, face in her hands, feeling every single second of it. Because when you care that much, when losing truly feels like the end of the world, you are capable of doing something that almost no one else can. You are capable of making people care just as much as you do. And that, ultimately, is what champions are made of.